I think one of the more interesting discussions out there is where Nintendo is kind of taking place or shape with the Nintendo Switch of its all-time greatest home consoles, or anything that Nintendo's considered a home console. Exactly where is it ranked? I've talked with people about this over the years. This is something that's been in the discussion to me ever since 2019 with the release of Fire Emblem and Astral Chain and Link's Awakening. That awesome year that they had, I was thinking, wait a minute, the Nintendo Switch is kind of like up there with a lot of the best Nintendo systems of all time. Because if you remember, at that point, we'd already received The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. We had an announcement for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. We already had Mario Odyssey. We already got Fire Emblem that was coming out that year. Astral Chain, Bayonetta had already dropped. So many different games were just dropping left and right, left and right. You know, they had the Mario Tennis games and all that stuff. So it was just great to see. So I was thinking, man, where is the Nintendo Switch ranked? To me, it was still a bit too early to say that it was the best Nintendo system or even the best system of all time. But now with the release of Kirby and the Forgotten Land dropping recently, and you look at the amount of great games that the Nintendo Switch has released since 2017 in their hit franchises in a lot of different genres, you can actually make an argument that it is the best Nintendo system of all time, and definitely one of the best systems of all time. Of course, this is all wildly subjective, and I completely get that, but I'm trying to look at it with no nostalgia goggles, no rose-tinted lenses, no, oh man, I played GoldenEye for 55 hours straight when I was a kid, so that's the greatest thing ever. And I'm looking at it as a pure utility when it comes to variety of different games, third-party games, first-party games, different genres, different things, innovation. When you start putting together everything, the Switch definitely stands at the top of systems out there. But before we get into any more of this, what's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and jump into this because I already know some of you guys will be like, what? Blasphemy, the GameCube did this, did that, did this. And I completely get that. Or the N64 did this or that, or the Super Nintendo did this or that. And to me, it was like between the Super Nintendo and the GameCube. Those were like the two best home consoles for myself personally. Everybody has different opinions. Some of you wee babies that grew up in that era, you guys think that's the best system. I completely get it. And it's going to be subjective based on what you like. But personally, me, as a Nintendo fan for 30 plus years, been playing since the original, been playing even some of the Game & Watch old school stuff back in the day, I've seen Nintendo evolve from just having a few key franchises here and there and relying heavily on third-party support, like the NES for example, to pretty much being able to carry everything by themselves and force the third-party developers to make games for those systems. And the Switch is exactly the example of that. I kind of like it because it kind of lets Nintendo put the pressure on themselves because they know they have to support the system themselves. And I think that's the reason why, along with the Nintendo Switch obviously combining home console and portable, we've gotten so many great games. But if you look at it in its totality, look at the number of games across the systems. It's just been increasing and increasing and increasing. The interesting thing though is that if you go from, like, let's say the NES to the Super Nintendo, there was a decrease in overall games. I think the NES had like 700, Super Nintendo had like 500, 600. And then you go from the Super Nintendo to the N64, there was another big decrease to about 400 games or so. But then if you go to the GameCube, there was about 600 total games, official ones. And then you go to the Wii, that jumps all the way up to over 1,500 games because of the inclusion of the Nintendo Wii shop that they have on there. Of course, the Wii U was a bit down, but it did have a lot of digital games as well. And the Nintendo Switch has been just absolutely nuts with its game lineup. There's like thousands upon thousands. I've lost count after like what, 3,000 games or something like that. So the Switch obviously has the most games when it comes down to it. And I think that if you look at the quality of games that are coming out, we just talked about Kirby and the Forgotten Land, but if you look at it this year already, Triangle Strategy, which is an absolutely incredible game. Also games like Pokemon Legends Arceus. If you have games like Pokemon Sword and Shield, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Bravely Default 2, Live Alive is coming. We're gonna have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. We got stuff like Skyward Sword HD, it just keeps on going. Super Smash Brothers, the biggest Smash Brothers in the history of it. Octopath Traveler, you know, there's just so many games. Astral Chain, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, that's an exclusive. Link's Awakening, you have the old school, you have the new school, and then you have that third-party support that really no other Nintendo system had with other games. I mean, the only one that I can think about is like the original NES, the Super Nintendo had it a little bit, the GameCube had some, but if you look at it with the Switch, obviously with the amount of games, but with the quality of those games, having big games like Dragon Quest, right? And having stuff like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, 10-2, and also 12 on the system, and also that like that Maxima game and everything like that. So you get all of these different classic games, you get a lot of the new games, you're getting some of these big third-party games like Doom Eternal here or there, and it just creates a nice mix of the indie games, the AA games, the AAA games, along with the utility of the Nintendo Switch just being a system that you can take anywhere as a hybrid. It's a portable and it's a home console. It's hard to say that the Nintendo Switch isn't at the top of the list with just the sheer amount of games, even if you add in stuff like Luigi's Mansion and also Splatoon as well, and Splatoon 3 is coming out. We had Splatoon 2, now Splatoon 3, we're having Mario Strikers that's coming out too. It just keeps flowing. It just keeps coming. It keeps coming with games like this. And they ported over a lot of the best games from the Wii U and even made them better. So stuff like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, New Super Mario Bros. U, obviously Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then with the Booster Course Pack as well, adding more content onto the game that's already there. Games like Animal Crossing, New Horizons as well. So if you just start, like I said, pairing up all the different third-party JRPGs, third-party games that Nintendo works with them, stuff like Bravely Default, the Team Asano games, Triangle Strategy, you pair that with all the other third-party support that the system has, it's hard to say that the Nintendo Switch isn't at the top of it. The sheer volume is just immense. And I know there's going to be people, like I said before, that have their nostalgia goggles on, and trust me, I like to think in those too. Like, I like to sit there and say, oh, well, the GameCube had this or it had that, but overall, I mean, like, I can just keep going with the list of games here. It's got good Crash Bandicoot games on the system when it comes to third party. It's got stuff like Shin Megami Tensei 3 and also Shin Megami Tensei 5 as well. It's got Metroid on this system. It's got so many things that you can look throughout the history of Nintendo platforms and say, okay, well, that system's missing this franchise or missing that game or doesn't have enough of this or that. Every single Nintendo system has something like that. Even the Switch has a deficiency like that. Okay, well, it could have a little bit more big third-party games, for example, right? But if you look at it overall, the Switch still has more third-party games and more content than any other Nintendo system. And if you look at the first-party games as well, it's fastly rising or already above many of those other systems. Like the N64 is a system that people like to talk about a lot. Maybe that's the best of all time. It just didn't have enough games. Nobody would ever want there to ever be the library that the N64 had in the future. Like, if you look at that library, you're like, well, it's missing Metroid, it's missing Fire Emblem, it's missing a lot of stuff. It really is. So I think that's the problem with kind of comparing some of Nintendo's older systems. It just doesn't stack up because they didn't have the franchises ready to go, or those weren't popular enough in America. I mean, there's just issues across the board. If you look at the Super Nintendo, I think that's pretty good to kind of compare. There's some really good games on there, but there just wasn't enough because the shelf life wasn't as long. It was a good shelf life, but it wasn't as long. And a lot of games that were really good actually stayed over in Japan. So for example, stuff like Live Alive, there was a Pokemon Game Freak game that was really good that stayed in Japan. There was a lot of good titles that just stayed in Japan when it came down to it, you know? So you look at that, that kind of excludes the Super Nintendo in some respects, right? Terranigma never got localized here in the US, but also in Europe and in Japan. So that's awesome. Chrono Trigger is awesome and everything. So I kind of eliminate that. The GameCube is kind of the system that you can say okay, or the Wii, because it's backwards compatible and the Wii had so many games, but just the amount of shovelware on the systems like the NES and also on the Wii just make me think, man, there was just a lot of shovelware. There was kind of a lack of RPGs. It had some RPGs with the Wii, but a lot of it, Nintendo was kind of forcing the motion play, and there was a lot of games that didn't support the regular controller. And I think that the Wii was cool. It was fun for what it was, but to me, it just lacks some of that core appeal that Nintendo has built into a lot of their systems, the casual and core appeal. So I kind of eliminate the Wii as well. I eliminate the NES. So really just kind of comes down to the GameCube and to the Nintendo Switch. If we're talking about anything that Nintendo considers a home console, portable's obviously a completely different thing, but I do feel that the Nintendo Switch is a better portable as well. When it comes to the portable library, it's better than anything that they've had before because they have the full force of the portable games and also of the home console games as well. Being able to play a huge home console new Zelda game portably is awesome and not like a remake or remaster. So to me, it kind of beats them out as well, but we're talking about, for the sake of this discussion, this video, the home consoles as well. But I just kind of see it as beating out everything without the nostalgia goggles. And I think that's the biggest thing that's going to be hard for some of you guys in the comment section and people just to realize that the nostalgia goggles are strong. They're really strong. And trust me, there's been times I've been toying with this for years to make this type of video, but I think with Kirby and the Forgotten Land, with Pokemon Legends Arceus, with Triangle Strategy, with Mario Strikers, the Battle League that's coming out, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes as well, plus Live Alive, and just all of these games just continuously come out exclusive after exclusive after exclusive. And even with some of the third-party stuff that's coming out like Rune Factory and things like that, it just makes me say, wait a minute, this is the best system. You know, when it comes to Nintendo platforms, it is the best system, and it's definitely in the running for the best system of all time when it comes to overall lineup. Just me subjectively thinking that. I'm not sure if it's there yet, but it's definitely in the conversation. I think that what pushes it past that is probably like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. If that is an absolute banger, like it's just as good as the first game, if not like way better, then I think it's definitely like right up there, you know, when it comes down to it. To me, it's like the PlayStation 2. To me, that's one of the greatest of all time. Obviously, GameCube, I think, is one of the greatest of all time as well. So to me, it kind of pushes it in that conversation and says, well, wait a minute, it might be better when it comes to the PS2. So to me, it's kind of like those two systems back and forth. But man, I am like thrilled. Like, this is a good conversation to have, even if you don't agree with me. The fact that we can even put the Nintendo Switch in that category is awesome, because we weren't putting the 3DS, we weren't putting the Wii U in those categories. We weren't putting the Wii in that category. I mean, some people probably did, but I know I wasn't. So it's been generations of me saying, that's not quite as good as what we had before. That's not quite as good as the GameCube. That's not quite as good as the DS. That's not quite as good as the Super Nintendo. And we finally have a Nintendo system that I can say, okay, I feel confident because it has the variety. It has the RPGs, the action games like Bayonetta. It has the strategy RPGs. It has the Western games. It has some big Western games, not quite all the Call of Duties and stuff, but you can still play Doom Eternal on there. You can still play games like The Outer Worlds. You can still play Skyrim. You can still play Dragon's Dogma. There's still quite a bit of big Western games as well on there. And heck, they announced the new Hogwarts game is coming. We'll see how it runs on there, but still, it's announced. So to me, that's definitely a good thing. The fact that we can even have this conversation and it's not laughable, that you can say, okay, yeah, Switch has this franchise, it has Metroid, it has Zelda, it has Mario, it has Smash, it has Kirby, and a lot of these are like the best reviewed or one of the best in the series. Oh, it has Fire Emblem. Oh, it has Bravely Default. Oh, it has Octopath Traveler. Oh, it has Triangle Strategy. Oh, it has Mario Strikers. Oh, it has spin-offs with Fire Emblem. Oh, it has a mainline Shin Megami Tensei on there, a brand new one that's really good. Oh, it has all these Final Fantasies. Oh, it has Dragon Quest. Oh snap, it has so many franchises and so many games out there. In comparison, the GameCube has no real Dragon Quest games on their mainline, and it has one Final Fantasy game. One Final Fantasy on the GameCube, and that to me is like the system that's closest. Like, you gotta have more than one mainline Final Fantasy, and the Switch has that same Final Fantasy that the GameCube has with Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. So to me, when you start looking at it overall, best Nintendo system of all time, home console, definitely, and definitely gunning up there. I think with the release of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, with some of these other releases that are coming out this year, I think Bayonetta 3, Breath of the Wild 2, if those are super bangers, and also, I mean, you can't leave all this out, which I talked about RPGs, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 Definitive Edition, Xenoblade Chronicles Torn of the Golden Country, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, all already out or coming out with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 at the September of this year. I mean, with Xenoblade 3, with Bayonetta 3, and also with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, I think that's what, to me, is going to push it kind of to that best of all time. But right now, like I said, it's vying. It's like right there, you know, it's like who's going to win the race. But to me, the Switch is already not even like what, it's 5 years, a little bit over 5 years, but we're having this conversation. Just goes to show you how mass the library is of games, you know, and it's not something that you can say no way, you know. At the end of the day, like, you can say, okay, well, I understand, maybe I disagree, but I understand. But I think that those 3 games are going to be like the big like chip to see where it kind of pushes the switch. Like, if those are bangers, which I think they're all going to be super good, I'm pretty much going to say, okay, yeah, I think this is the best system of all time. But once again, it's subjective. This is just a video talking about it. You guys are definitely entitled to your opinions on what you guys think and why and all of that. I just feel non-nostalgia goggles, you start comparing everything, Switch is definitely at the top there. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.